Ghost of Yotei has me conflicted, and I'm sure many would agree that the game has a walking time bomb attached to it at the center of this game's marketing, being its lead actor, Erika Ishii. Now, before I delve into everything I want to say and how the industry is changing, I think for the better personally, remember that I'm not attacking this woman. I just want to explore what's going on in the industry here and whether what's happening is a good or bad thing for the future. Obviously, as you all know, Sony is set to release Ghost of Yotei this fall. It's being pushed as one of the big PlayStation exclusive releases of 2025. Although the hype surrounding the game has been very muted, at least from what I can tell online. This may come down to a few things, mostly that people really wanted a sequel to Tsushima, myself included, and the annoying responses from others saying that Jin's story is over is kind of ridiculous when that first game hinted at the much larger Mongol invasion coming inland, which would have made for an awesome sequel. But what I personally believe, unfortunately, is that Ghost of Tsushima, like Assassin's Creed and many other franchises have, they've all faced is that they have all been victims of this activism and the change in leadership over the past decade and then some. We saw this with Dragon Age, which, funnily enough, Erika Ishii voiced the female Rook version in Vilgard as well. A game that historically mega flopped so badly that Electronic Arts gave it away for free via PlayStation Plus, not even 6 months after its official release, and even then, people barely redeemed the game because nobody wanted to play it. And we're seeing this rise and fall in diversity-led storylines, which has me wondering if people are just done with these sorts of games entirely. What actually sparked this video idea for me was not actually Ghost of Yotei first, but an article from thegamer.com from the beginning of July. That article is titled, "Storylines Have Been Cut, Baldur's Gate 3 Actor Warns That Diversity is Being Removed from Some Games." To sum it up for you, the gamer spoke to one of the voice actors from Baldur's Gate 3. That voice actor interviewed, by the way, was Samantha Barrett or Burt. Anyway, they voiced Karlach in BG3. Also, if you enjoyed the video, consider liking it and commenting since YouTube's new algorithm is changing how the site recommends content, so I would appreciate it, thank you. But anyway, this is how the gamer opens up their article. Ever since Donald Trump's win in the 2024 US presidential election, companies and their executives were quick to try and curry favor with the president. This included ditching DEI initiatives and policies, which even more companies later joined them on following an anti-DEI executive order from Trump. While many of these initiatives were strictly about hiring practices, the sentiment behind this shift in policy was felt everywhere, with the rise in racist, transphobic, and other bigoted laws and attitudes across the United States and beyond. Yeah, as you can tell, this article is very much so in favor of diversity than being against it. However, the argument I would make, and why Ghost of Yotei is so relevant to this overall discussion, is that what we're witnessing is actually the death cries of a movement that has largely been abandoned already. It's no real secret to say that Erika Ishii, who plays Atsu in Yotei, is pro-diversity and all that sort of stuff. The actor apparently goes by all pronouns despite being clearly a woman themselves, and Ishii also blocks anyone who disagrees with her, even if you haven't interacted with her directly. Like, for example, I'm blocked by her on Twitter, despite not even knowing that she existed until Yotei got announced myself. So this inability on the behalf of people like Ishii to not even want to discuss the state of games or opposing opinions is a big reason why we are where we are right now. For a supposed movement that is apparently so forward-thinking and open to diversity, they really are a pretty, close-minded bunch of people who refuse to actually, allow real diversity to flourish in their spaces. Instead, the diversity that is allowed is usually just skin deep at best, with things like skin color or how you present yourself mattering more. But ironically, what's in your head, how you think and perceive things, which in my opinion is arguably far more important to pretty much anything than how you look, is oftentimes looked down upon by this same kind of a group. And they're usually segregated or blocked if you don't align 100% with their ideas of these sorts of types of people, which is ironic, of course. Because how can you be a champion of diversity when you so evidently hate and block people without even giving them a chance to speak to you? It instead makes this community of people, like Erika Ishii, seem conceited and honestly narrow-minded, which they'd probably laugh at, but unfortunately, it is how they're perceived. But the fact that the industry is allegedly removing diverse storylines is not really surprising, because even when places like America had so-called progressive leadership in Joe Biden, who was, let's be honest, barely awake or aware of his own presidency, the fake push of these so-called important diversity stories were still met with major backlash. And once things like USAID was abolished for many of these initiatives suspiciously tied to these types and their belief systems, suddenly overnight multiple institutions that were seemingly bulletproof no matter how poorly their products sold or did just crumbled overnight, revealing that USAID in a bombshell report from earlier this year was responsible for keeping all of these so-called diverse programs open by funneling American taxpayer money without the citizens knowing where their money was even going in the first place. And before people say that I'm lying, well, here's the official White House website detailing some of the things paid by USAID from American taxpayer money. Stuff like LGBT sex changes, transgender operas, trans children books, and much more. So it's really no coincidence that the drop in diversity-led stories in video games are correlating with the seizure of USAID's uncounted mass spreading of funds, if you ask me. It seems less like the game industry is removing diversity-led stories and more like their background investors evaporated overnight once the presidency changed, meaning that they simply did not have the money, or really the protection, to make such stories anymore. Which may make you think then, well, why can't they exist regardless of USAID helping them? The truth, which they're finding out quickly, is that the problem with diversity-led storylines is that they are painfully generic, constantly starring insufferable, almost borderline villain-like main characters and clear agendas that people are obviously tired of. So, why is Ghost of Yotei coming out then still? The easy answer is that the game was too far into development to just not release at this point. The game's entire pitch was very obviously made during the 2020 to now period of time, the exact same time frame where these sorts of stories and concepts are being funded and pushed by these institutions. But now that they're crumbling, or just gone pretty much, these sorts of stories and games need to stand on their own 2 feet now. And Yotei would have done amazing, probably, had it released in like 2021 or 2022. Which, yeah, would have been impossible, I know, considering that Tsushima came out in 2020. Realistically, that could never have happened. But the timeline that it's releasing in now is a completely different one to when it was first, greenlit, I guess, where people are simply tired of these stories and characters that are being voiced, or in this case, also mocapped by people who evidently hate the majority of their consumer base and their belief systems. You may have seen this clip of Erika Ishii showing her sword skills for Yotei, and I put that in, quotations, I guess, because they do not look impressive, or how people, online criticize how Ishii does not look, how do I put it, physically fit at all to play the main character in Yotei. And this is what makes the game a conflicting mess for me personally, because playing the game, you'll know that you're controlling someone who is evidently hateful towards anyone who just doesn't think like them 100% of the time. And I did also see people online wondering why Sucker Punch, who made this game by the way, chose to use Erika Ishii's face as the model for the character. Manga Lawyer, for example, on Twitter showed how Atsu's voice actor in Japan is a cute Japanese woman known for past works named Feruz Ai. I hope I said that right. And people were puzzled as to why this character's face wasn't using that person over Erika Ishii's. I think the answer is easy, which is that depending on where the game is made, the face models are based on people who live and, operate there. So, Erika Ishii lives in America, Sucker Punch is American, it's all Western, so that's why. Same reason why Delson and his brother look like they're actors in Infamous Second Son, also made by Sucker Punch by the way. And the same reason why Eve in Stellar Blade is based on the likeness of a South Korean supermodel and not a model from, say, Europe or America or something. These games were all made by people from different places with different belief systems and more, so it didn't really surprise me that Sucker Punch did this with Yotei. I mean, even the guy who voiced and played Jin Sakai in Tsushima had his face and voice obviously used in that game too. While I get it, personally, I'm sick of seeing voice actors' faces in video games myself. Mostly because it takes me out of the experience knowing that their faces are not just in like one game, but multiple other games. It just makes everything feel less unique when you see the same voice actor's face and their voice too, I guess, for like the 10th time in a video game. I would prefer unique faces, or at least, how Capcom, for example, does it, Because if you don't know, Capcom, when it comes to like Resident Evil or even Devil May Cry, they have a voice actor as the voice, of course, but the face model is always based on actual models from like around the world, not just from where they're from, but the model doesn't exactly, voice the character, which is also smart to do. This at least allows Capcom's characters to not only feel unique, but distant enough where the baggage, whether it's socially or ideologically, is also removed from the equation. However, when it comes to Yotei, we now have a game starring someone who both looks and sounds like someone who is vehemently against a large portion of the world for simply existing. Meaning that the escapism that you want from these games when you buy them is no longer escapism because you're constantly being reminded that the person that you're playing as in this game is someone who hates you in real life because you don't agree with them on everything. This is why I'm more so just worried for Sucker Punch, but after all, they knew what they were doing with this game and how it would be accepted, they just do. I said in previous videos from sources at Sony that internally they're not really happy with this game's direction. Because honestly, a Jin Sakai sequel would have sold gangbusters had that been the plan all along for 2025. A solid male main character driven game is what a lot of players want right now. And all the games that have been doing the best over the past year and then some have largely starred male characters. It's like a return to form for what people want these days. And when they do put female characters in it and the games still sell well, they're usually very attractive as well, and gee, I wonder why. But regardless, the industry from a Western perspective, they just refuse to learn, and it's why time and again places like China and more will just continue to dominate the industry. A good example of an imminent release is Wu Chang Fallen Feathers. This game comes out very soon as of this video going live anyways. I can also confirm that I am playing this game already myself. I got sent a code for it on PS5 like a week back. I can't say much about how I feel about the game, obviously because of embargo, but I will say this at least. Hopefully the publisher doesn't get mad. But I think the game is good. It's completely devoid of any pandering or nonsense, and it feels like an old school game with all the new bells and whistles graphically and whatnot that you would expect from games these days. What I'm saying is that Wu Chang Fallen Feathers will likely be a next, big mega hit from China pretty much. And as Alania Analytics says, which is a website all about tracking the performances of video games they believe is seen here in June 2025, that Wu Chang Fallen Feathers has the potential to be the next $100 million plus success story from China when it releases this July. Alania also states here that about 60% of wish lists on Steam alone come from players who played and bought Black Myth Wukong already, which was obviously one of the more successful game releases in years, and that's putting it lightly. They also state that Wukong's player base exploded due to its ties to China with specifically Chinese-born players. And Wu Chang is similarly positioned as well, with it being a similar Souls-like experience too. And as seen here, Wu Chang's DNA connection to other Souls-likes like AI Limit, Sekiro, and more mean that same kind of crowd who buys these sorts of games are also eagerly anticipating it too. And that the Souls-like genre in general, according to Alania's findings, makes roughly $50 million on average a month combined from all the game sales within that subgenre alone, which I didn't know about that. And then, of course, once you factor in stuff like Elden Ring and Wukong, they have caused that spending to reach somewhere near $100 million monthly, if you can believe it. And with where this subgenre is going with this trend, that it could reach upwards of $150 to even $200 million a month. Here's a handy graph that they made to show how this growth has exploded over time, and why I brought up Wu Chang amidst Yotei is also because, as you've probably noticed from the gameplay on screen, which is not mine by the way, so the publisher doesn't kill me or something, this is, official footage that they have released themselves. The main character of Wu Chang is obviously an attractive, athletic, slim woman, almost supermodel looking Chinese lady. She's pretty much the antithesis of Western design pretty much, which will also help the game sell because unlike the West, the East does value beauty in their character still. Even Stellar Blade, a South Korean game, sold well over 1 million copies recently on Steam alone when it hit PC this year. Yet routinely, the West is failing itself unless they release games with strong male character leads in them, like Space Marine 2 for example, which has broken over 7 million units sold since late last year, which is why it's extra puzzling knowing that Sony, a Japanese company, is instead allowing their franchises to be sabotaged by activists like this when their competition around them in China and South Korea are just bodying their own games with releases that are devoid of the very ideologies that are clearly holding people like Sony back. And it doesn't help when Sony is allowing their tentpole franchises to be led with actors who say things like this, for example in 2020, when Erika Ishii said, "Abolish the police. It is unconscionable to allow this racist institution that terrorizes the citizens they are sworn to protect, abolish the police." Yes, she actually said that, and the thing that America needs less of right now is law and order. Or, for example, as seen here, where she immediately equates to anyone being a conservative or Trump supporter to mean that they're xenophobic or racist. This is what I mean. This is why I keep saying in my videos that social media was a mistake, because we don't need to know everyone's opinions. And if you are a part of something where people can boycott you, yeah, it's even worse. Because now what she's saying is anyone who doesn't think like her is the devil, basically, and it shows the sheer hubris that, still believing that the things that she makes or is a part of can survive without the majority's support, is exactly why I'm telling you that Ghost of Yotei is a walking time bomb. Because it is. That these sorts of statements have killed much smaller or medium-sized games already, even bigger ones too. Entire studios have been gutted like BioWare, who worked with Erica on Veilguard already. And she should know that saying these things is just going to cause severe damage, but frankly, I don't really think that Erica cares either way. Because, like with Veilguard, let's say that Yotei fails financially. I don't know, I'm not going to claim that it is because it's too early to tell so far. But for the sake of argument, let's say if history repeats itself here, what happens then? Sucker Punch would get destroyed pretty much because they decided to pin their whole game on the ideologies and beliefs of a woman who is completely cooked when it comes to seeing people as anything but the enemy if they don't agree with her opinions 100% of the time. More than ever, people, especially in video games, are aware of how poisonous activism can be due to how much damage they've caused already. It's almost as if to people like this, it doesn't matter if the product is commercially viable to them, all that matters is that it exists. And Erica really wouldn't care either way because whether you buy Yotei or not, she's already been paid for her work on it. Like the activists at those companies that are paid to ruin your favorite franchises in the years past, whether the things they work on do well or not doesn't really matter to them because they got their bag already. So while you have these activist-driven games still coming out, it's very obvious that the East is going to keep eating their competition because they're doing none of that. After all, look at this graph here showing how other Souls-like sold and did prior versus their release. As you can see, Wu Chang, according to Alinea Analytics, is currently overperforming from a pre-order standpoint at a much higher rate than other games of the same genre within the same time. This could mean that Wu Chang potentially explodes when it actually releases. But what I do hope more for is games that release cheaper as well, which apparently Wu Chang is also doing. It's not a fully priced game. But I mean, what are we supposed to do when the alternative to these sorts of games are instead stuff like Ghost of Yotei, where they're led by these activists who don't want your business unless you ideologically align with them 100% of the time? It's like they're going out of their way to ruin the games that they work on, and it's incredible that Sony nor Sucker Punch have really, reined in this Erica Ishii at all for her opinions. Because comments like this will cost you millions. And circling back to that The Gamer article that started this all, they confirm as seen here that they too have heard that diversity or queer stories, as they put it, are being cut out of future games. And the thing is that this doesn't really need to happen, but unfortunately those types got so overzealous and confident with their propaganda that it overshadowed everything else. Why do you think certain games like Marvel Rivals continue to do so well? After all, recently, that game is going to be getting swimsuit skins added. You're seeing the Psylocke bathing suit skin on screen here. Yeah, you'd never get something like this in a Western game. It would never exist. Even Luna Snow is getting a swimsuit skin with ice high heels, her cheeks out, and even her feet are in full view during the MVP screen. Yeah, these devs know what they're doing, and those skins are going to make them a hell of a lot of money, but you won't see that sort of thing in a Western game because it's considered too prude. As if it's too condescending or something in their eyes when it's actually the opposite. Because what do you think people want more of in their games? Is it this, or is it this? You know the answer, even if you don't like the outcome, but at least you know what the truth is and isn't. As that Baldur's Gate 3 voice actor said in the interview, without exposing developers, I know that's happening. Their storylines have been cut. They tell me historically appeasement is a really bad thing. Although the same voice actor claims that indie games still exist for a reason for these sorts of diverse stories to be told, which is fair. However, it's obvious now that pinning hundreds of millions of dollars on the actions of activists are a disastrous outcome no matter the result. The Gamer does try to state a win as seen here, where they claim that despite the whole Gamergate thing, that games like Baldur's Gate 3, which has LGBT options, still sold 15 million copies. But of course, they failed to admit that the reason why BG3 did what it did was because those elements they claim were not forced upon players unless they chose to see it themselves. Baldur's Gate 3 is a smart way of going about diversity, which is that it's up to the player's choice and not the designers. Whereas with Yotei, there is no option to change Atsu's face until I guess it comes to PC and people mod it out. which I'm 100% sure Nexus mods or someone else will then ban those mods that change her face claiming that it's anti-LGBT or woman or something else probably. But in BG3's case at least, I beat that whole game and never saw anything lame or annoying in my playthrough myself. I don't necessarily have a problem with LGBT relationships in games, but when you're drowning your entire game in those ideas to the point where it becomes more so the entire game's identity, yeah, it's a problem. Basically, it's this, okay? The good way to do diversity is Baldur's Gate 3, and the bad way is Dragon Age Veilguard. Because no matter what you did in that game, you couldn't escape its propaganda. While I have zero issues with Sucker Punch as a studio, and I think people who work there are clearly talented, and I am in no way saying people should boycott Ghost of Yotei or anything like that, we need to address the elephant in the room. And that is Erika Ishii with her very obviously damaging and politically divisive opinions. It's not my fault they hired her. They did that themselves, but now they got this multi-million-dollar AAA game coming out that, yes, looks fun to play and looks great graphically, but it's all being held together by this actor who genuinely hates the targeted audience for this sort of game. So I wonder, will that be enough to derail the whole game? I guess time will tell, but it's not a good look when your lead actor is doing what has so obviously not worked in the past for any other franchise. Time will really only tell, but what do you think about all of this? Is the removal of diversity in stories a good or bad thing? Is Ghost of Yotei in trouble, or is this all just a nothing burger to you? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.